Well, I apologize for how dark and murky. Woo, this camera quality. Okay, I apologize, but hey, you're getting this for free. Anyway, rather than do the anonymous voice thing with just a picture, I wanted to do this live so I can get a real good feel in reaction to two movies I just saw on Netflix. You can like them both for the same or similar reasons: Officer Black Belt and Rebel Ridge. I consider them both to be martial arts movies, even though Rebel Black Belt is listed as an action movie, not necessarily. Sorry, Rebel Ridge is listed as a action movie rather than as a martial arts movie. But they both have very strong martial arts themes. Of course, Officer Black Belt about a really big. This looks like a big guy, really big Korean guy in his prime who does, and I like this. He does Taekwondo and Judo and Kendo. Okay, he does all three of those. He's got third degrees in all three of them. And of course, my system is made of primarily Taekwondo, secondary Judo. Kendo, no, even though I know some sword cuts because I don't have a black belt in Kendo, so I can't say that Kendo is in that system. And I never done it. I don't have I'll say boxing, but I don't have a black belt in boxing or coaching certification in boxing, but I did do an amateur boxing match and I got some training in that. So I don't have any kendo training. But it's really funny because that's exactly what I wanted to do when I was starting up as an adult. I wanted to do those three things and I wanted to do kendo. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but kendo's coming. And what they do in Officer Black Belt is his job to help the police department in Korea arrest people. Now, let me say this really quick about both Officer Black Belt and Rebel Ridge. These movies are not for kids. So if any parents of any of my students are watching this, or if any students are watching this, no. Don't say, oh, Miss Cecil said I should watch this movie because it's got good martial arts stuff. Either one of them, no. I wish you could, kids. I really wish kids could, but some of the content, no. It's just because of some of the content of the type of bad people that they deal with, especially in Officer Black Belt. That you can't watch that. Sorry, kids, you can't watch that. But where both of these movies are valuable is I think that they have, believe it or not, realistic assessments of what would happen if people had those abilities and tried to use them on folks for real. Okay, let me start with Officer Black Belt. Officer Black Belt, especially to me, shows that everybody's right when it comes about using martial arts for real. Now, what do I mean by that? You're going to hear people say that, oh, well, a lot of those techniques that you do, or especially if they're pointing at me, well, you're going to do those techniques because you're big. That's the reason why you've really been able to pull it off. And you may be naturally athletic too. That's why you can pull it off. And if anyone else tried to do it, oh, they couldn't do it, right? And Officer Black Belt said, bam, that's right. So they got a really big Korean dude doing them who says in the beginning of the movie, I really like sports. I like sports. So that's why he can do them. Now, those of us people like me who say, if somebody sat around all day doing that and they trained it long enough and they cross-trained and did it with some kind of pressure testing and had good technique, they could do it. And it shows that too. And it shows one thing I like to say that a lot of other people don't want to ante up to, and that's this. I can't vouch for the character in Rebel Ridge, the hero, but the hero in Officer Black Belt comes from some kind of money. His dad owns a restaurant, so to me, that's money, and that's enough for you to be able to sit around all day and enroll in all this training and learn how to do a whole bunch of stuff that everybody else can't learn how to do as fast, so they can be super effective in their prime, and they're going to be able to beat up people with this stuff for real, while they're still young enough to take lumps and thumps. The rest of us have to work, okay? And unless your daddy is your coach or your mama is your coach, that's the only way you're going to get to a high enough skill level where you could do exactly what he did. You'd either have to be some kind of savant, or you can sit around all day and just practice. And that means that somebody got money that's going to pay for your bills. And he's got a job that allows that, and his dad has money. So his dad owns a restaurant. He can sit around all day and enroll in all these sports or a good chunk of the day and then go deliver stuff at the end of the day and then stay with dad rent free. A lot of other people can't do that. The rest of us, we either have to start really young. That's why my son can use this stuff for free. I mean, for real. He started off really young. So, and his dad was his coach, was his primary coach after a while. Once I got a black belt, I switched over and I started coaching, and then I still kept training. And then I took him with me to my teachers, but he'd been doing it for a long time. In a way, I'm like that. And one of my friends pointed it out to me. I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who you are, my friend from the Philippines who wears glasses. You know who you are. I'm not shouting out his name because I don't want the internet. If I say something bad, I don't want the internet going after him. But anyway, see, I started when I was a toddler, but I didn't continue when I was a toddler, but I got exposed when I was a toddler. So I got a subconscious basis in there. So I learned a few techniques and I kind of just did those. I'm the man who did one technique 1,000 times. You know that adage. That was me because that's all I knew. I only knew a few techniques. And I thought I could fight and I was making the stuff up. But no, people that actually had competent, decent training would be able to wipe the floor with me when I was young. Fortunately, a lot of people I fought weren't that well trained. That helped too because I got to see how people move for real. Now, let's bring it back to, and that's one thing I like about Officer Black Belt and Rebel Ridge. Now, another thing that people say is, well, if you tried to do that for real, you would get shot or stabbed. Both Rebel Ridge and Officer Black Belt shows the pro tags either getting shot or stabbed, and I love it. They get shot, they get stabbed. And it shows that if you try some of this stuff on people, not that you shouldn't do it, not that you shouldn't learn it, but you got to be aware of the fact that they might shoot you. Okay? It's not going to go as easy. Now, there are people who counter that and say, well, we know that it's high risk and it's better than doing nothing. Officer Black Belt and Rebel Ridge show that too. Let me switch over to Rebel Ridge. Rebel Ridge is proof of concept in cinema of the people who say, well, the best thing that would be preferred for people in military is to learn some type of jujitsu. I would teach jujitsu to the military. That is what is the main art in Rebel Ridge. That protagonist is a super in shape black dude. I wish I was in that kind of shape. I wasn't even that type of shape when I was in the reserves. He is a jujitsu master who trains the military and trains them for realistic things. Now, one thing that really irked me about Rebel Ridge, I couldn't figure out why it irked me, but then I realized I had to admit it irked me because it's true. It irked me because it's something that I know I would have done if I had that ability at his age. Because I could see a young black dude like I was doing exactly what he did. And that was major spoilers coming up. Why would you ride with the money in the backpack when you could have just wired it to the post office and then you'd have been able to pick it up? You know the cops are going to stop you, black dude. You know that. You riding around on a 10-speed. You riding around on the 10-speed out in rural nowhere and you think ain't nobody going to bother you. Or what's wrong with you? Did you forget what world did you live in? Even if he wasn't black, you ride around with that kind of cash, you might get jacked. Then what you going to do? You get jacked like that, what money your cousin got? What money does your cousin have if you going to get jacked riding around on a 10-speed? But, and I realized I would have done that because if I had his kind of ability in my prime, I would have been so puffed up in the head that I thought if anybody messes with me, I'll use my jujitsu. Like people ain't got guns, like they ain't gonna gang up on you and whoop you, or like you might not get shot. That's what happens in Rebel Ridge. He got shot. First of all, he got jacked by the people who, it don't matter how much jujitsu you got, They can, and they can get away with hurting you. That is the police. That's why you hope that they're not corrupt. But they have the authority to stop you, and you better hope they're not corrupt and that you don't get jacked. They found a legal loophole around and take his money. And then he had to get more money for his cousin. When if he had just wired the money in the first place, and if he said, well, I want to wire the money, I'm going to go there myself so I can make sure it gets there quick, he could have rode the bike to the post office, then walked across the street, paid for the bail, and then his cousin would have been out of jail. Cousin wouldn't have died. Cousin been out of jail. But then again, you wouldn't have had a movie. You wouldn't have had a movie. So there is that. Now, let's go back to Officer Black Belt. Officer Black Belt got shanked. He got stabbed. Now, a lot of people say when you're using any type of close range combat techniques or combat sport techniques or martial arts techniques, they're nice, they're good, they're wonderful, they're very effective. And they show that in Officer Black Belt. But they don't account for you getting stabbed. They show that in Officer Black Belt too. He got stabbed. A lot of people say that the only way you're really going to be able to use that stuff for real and not have to worry about knives is if you have a stab vest. Officer Black Belt shows that too. They show him getting stabbed. Now, I was taught in the military that, yes, you can get stabbed. Because I said that, well, what if I get stabbed? But you may not necessarily die from being stabbed, even though it's pretty bad if you do get stabbed. You just don't want to get stabbed, even if it doesn't kill you. They show that in Officer Black Belt. Shows what would happen if you get stabbed. If you survive it. Yeah, you might be able to survive it because they stab you in a good spot, but it hurts and you're going to be out of commission for a while. They showed that in Officer Black Belt. Then they showed how the stab vest saved him. When he finally put stab vest on and went out there, the stab vest saved his life. It enabled him to continue to do his techniques. So Officer Black Belt addresses that too. Now, I can't remember if Rebel Ridge did multiple opponents unarmed. I don't really recall that too much. It did a little bit of it here and there. If I remember right, he did some redirections in there. So he would use the tactic of, I'm going to use campaign compliance on this one person and use that person as a shield against another one. They didn't show him doing anything against a ridiculous amount of people, maybe like 2, 3. Which is what a lot of people have told me that is how jiu-jitsu would work with multiple opponents. And that jiu-jitsu is not necessarily made for multiple opponents, even though it can be adapted to multiple opponents within reason. Rebel Ridge shows that. And remember, I said Rebel Ridge shows the guy getting shot. I can't remember exactly how he got shot besides the shootouts, but he got shot and he had to, get the bullets and stuff taken out, and it hurt. And he wasn't like, I'm an invisible man. No, they showed pain, which was good. And they showed in Rebel Ridge that even though he was super jiu-jitsu man, he still needed help in a lot of it. Officer Black Belt shows what I've been taught about multiple opponents and what I've seen people do with multiple opponents. A lot of people don't want to believe that you can use your forms or those type of striking, those classical striking, especially Taekwondo things against multiple people. Yes, you can. For I have done so. And you can. People have done it. This is the caveat. It depends upon the caliber of people that you are fighting. I was told, I'm not going to give out the number of people that I was told I could beat up, but I was told that, and I didn't believe it when I was told either. And I've never had to go up against that many. But I know the number that somebody told me that I could actually handle. I hope that never happens. Because if it does, I'm picking up a stick. I'm not even going to go after that many people empty-handed. I'm going to pick up a stick. Okay, so you've been warned. If it's more than one of you, if I got something, I'm going to dip into the hot keto bag of improvised weapons. Because it's not worth it. But Officer Black Belt, he handles multiple opponents, right? They're not as physically strong as he is. They're not as big as him. But there are still more of them than him, and they can still hurt him. And they are hitting him with stuff. They're not just going at him empty-handed. They're trying to pick up anything in the kitchen sink they can to come after Officer Black Belt. So Officer Black Belt handles him a little bit empty-handed first, but then what he has to do is he has to go into the empty hand / adaptability bag. Well, I shouldn't say empty hand, improvised weapons. He picks up something that he adapts his kendo techniques to and uses those to fight against multiple opponents. That's what Officer Black Belt does. And it shows that, and I shows it looks to me to be a reasonable, realistic application. Now, my last point, because this is getting kind of long. Officer Black Belt has a nemesis that he can't handle. A bigger guy, or just as big guy, who is just as strong as him, who also has some training. So that guy's got some iron shirt stuff going on in addition to all those muscles. Because there's a part where they say, well, what happened to you when you were in jail, right? How did you get to be so big? It's like, oh, I've been working out. He was working out, but he really had built up his torso so that he can really do iron shirt stuff. And that nullifies a lot of Officer Black Belt's techniques. So that point's addressed as well. So he ends up having to learn how to adapt to somebody who can withstand most of his sporting punches and kicks. He has to change up and adapt. How? Watch the movie. And for Rebel Ridge, his main enemy ends up being the system itself. And he has to learn how to rely on others in order for him to use his jujitsu principles to fight against corruption. So, Officer Black Belt, Rebel Ridge. 2 movies on Netflix. I highly recommend. I really like these heroes because they're super, but they're not beyond the realm of human possibility, and they have consequences. And they get shot. And they get stabbed. I think we need to have more action and martial arts movies like that to dispel some of the fantasies that people come up with where they think that they're going to be invincible if they study a martial art. You're not going to be invincible if you study a martial art. You're going to be more effective if you study a martial art. But you're not going to be invincible if you study a martial art. And if you want to be able to fight long, like some kind of hero as a martial artist, both of those protagonists were in really good physical condition. Now, do you have to be in really good physical condition to practice self-defense? No. No, you don't. You flat out don't. You don't. You don't have to be in shape to use these techniques if you really know these techniques. You don't have to be very strong to use these techniques if you know these techniques. You don't have to be young to use these techniques if you know these techniques. You don't have to be a big man to use these techniques if you know these techniques. I have seen people use these techniques, know these techniques, that have major physical disabilities. If you want to talk about self-defense, as in I'm just going to protect myself, or I'm just going to protect people that are around me, yes, you can absolutely do that. And if you have a problem with doing that, you can use a cane. You can use a coup baton. You can use a pistol. You can use a weapon. If we're talking about self-defense, if you want to talk about being like really super like combative, like I'm going to go out there and, you know, like Officer Black Belt does and take on criminals, and like the hero in Rebel Ridge, take on criminals and take that kind of body abuse. In my opinion, I could be wrong. I think you need some kind of physical conditioning for that. Do you understand the difference? Because self-defense, the guy that taught me how to box, I can't remember his name. That's why I just refer to him as the guy who taught me how to box. The first time I sparred with him, I actually knocked him way back with a punch. He came at me, come on, kid. I was like, yeah, right? I knocked him way back. Now, if that was a self-defense situation where I knocked him back, it's because I like knocked him like across the ring, but he absorbed it. If I just needed to hit somebody that was that big and get away, I'd have been able to do that. I'd have been able to hit him, probably would have flew up into something, been away from me from far enough. If I hit him, knock him away, and then I run and get out of there, I have defended myself. Now, if I want to stand now, when I stood there and tried to go toe to toe with him because I was so nervous, I got lit up after that. He said, oh, you pretty good, huh? It was like, whoa. Then we saw who was the master with hands and why he was the boxing coach and I was not. But see, that's two different purposes. If you think you need to stand there and, like they used to say back in the day, who knows what the term is now? If you're going to stand there and bang, you have to be able to take punishment. And it's still bad in the long run, because just because you don't feel some of that stuff today doesn't mean you're not going to feel it in the future. I can testify to that just from training. I took a really bad fall one time, and I didn't feel it then, and I just knew. I didn't even feel it then. I didn't even feel it a week from then. I didn't even feel it a month from there, but I started hearing the sound. I was like, yeah. I knew when it happened. I was like, I'm going to have to keep stretching this joint or else. And yeah, there was some damage there, and I'm like rehabbing it. But fortunately, I keep moving and training. I am rehabbing it. So it's not gonna be detrimental. It was a good thing, and it is a good thing that I had learned some yoga. That's one martial secret, people. Study yoga so you can counter stretch out the damage that you're doing to yourself with your favorite thing. You do not have to do the religion. You don't. So that's why some people will say that you're not doing yoga, Cecil. You're just stretching. Then that's fine, and just stretch. Learn how to stretch. So, Officer Black Belt and Rebel Ridge. They're on Netflix right now at the time of this video. Please watch them. They're great. They're great movies. They are not for children. They're not. Like I said, it's a shame, especially with Officer Black Belt, but parents, you'll see why. It's just, you can't. No, you just can't. No, you can't. You just can't. I'm sorry, you can't. You don't do that. Well, I mean, you can do what you want with your kids, but I'm saying here on record, they're not for children. And then they're not advertised as such, because I didn't sign in the Netflix Kids. That's what it's called? No, it didn't show up under there for me. So anyway, anybody got any questions? I got one viewer right now. Any questions? Anybody got any questions about anything? Want to talk about anything while I'm live in the corner of my room, in the dark, in the shadows, grainy video footage? Anybody got anything to say? All right, well, thanks for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe. You share some people like to talk about the martial arts and peace. And as always, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And if you are interested in ever taking any martial arts classes from me, go to my About tab. And of course, I'm always looking for donations. So go to that tab and send a donation on if you want. And if you're interested in cruelty-free artistry, cruelty-free rap music, check out Cecil Ryu Hip Hop. Well, that music is made without any cruelty, because it's just me doing it. Peace.